You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
This episode of Mission Log is brought to you by Helix Sleep. Mission Log listeners get $200 off their new mattress and 2 free pillows when you take the sleep quiz and order today at helixsleep.com/missionlog.
Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast, episode 390, Favor the Bold.
Welcome into another episode of Mission Log, a Roddenberry Star Trek podcast. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Norman Lau. Each week on Mission Log, we prepare ourselves for the imminent, inevitable discussion of morals, meanings, and messages in each and every episode of Star Trek.
This week, Favor the Bold. Now, that's what the bold are hoping for anyway, or else it'll just be a really short trip. I'll have trivia for you in a moment, but first, here's Norman to tell you how to reach us.
Personally, I would favor the spicy over favoring the bold, but that's just me.
Sure, yeah.
And now I'm hungry for chicken wings. Mission Log is a conversation about the stories of Star Trek, so that's why we want to hear from you. Use Mission Log Pod to give us a like and a share on Facebook and Twitter. If you're so inclined, give us a rating and a review at Apple Podcasts to help others find the show. You can call us on Skype at Mission Log Pod or by dialing 323-522-5641. Send us an email at missionlog@roddenberry.com. And remember, we may use your comments on an upcoming episode of Mission Log. And now, with the boldest trivia this side of the Alpha Quadrant, this is John Champion, who is bold and spicy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Trivia for today's episode, Favor the Bold. The episode was written by Ira Stephen Bear and Hans Beimler. Now, we've talked in trivia in the last few weeks about the challenge of keeping stories in order during a long arc, especially when those stories are sometimes shot out of order. This one was slightly different in terms of it being a challenge, since it was Ira and Hans who were writing a 2-part episode that would become the ending stories for a much longer arc. So an arc within an arc. Their names are on the story and script here, and it will be the same team up next week as well, and that just makes sense. Now, it was directed by Weinrich Kolbe. It may seem like it's been a while since we've heard much from Weinrich, and it has. The last episode of DS9 he directed was in season 4, way back, if you remember, Our Man Bashir. Who could forget? But don't worry, this longtime TNG director has been bouncing back and forth with Voyager as well, so his reputation as a frequent Trek contributor is well cemented. Speaking of that long arc, so this is an episode where we lay the groundwork for more of Odo's change and us questioning his motives, and funny enough, René Auberjonois was concerned about the same thing. He said that he would rarely ask the writers what they were up to, but this is one of those cases where he just felt like, okay, I need to go to Ira and Hans and find out what is in store here for Odo, because he didn't know how to play it, he didn't know it was coming, he just had to get clued in some way about where they were going with Odo's character, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see next week how that pays off. Couple of ship names. You folks know that I love to point out ship names when we have new ones. There's the Antares, the Cortez, and the Sarek. Sarek probably needs no introduction. No reason to explain to everybody within the sound of my voice who Sarek is. The Antares, now not to be confused here with the ship referenced in the TOS episode Charlie X, and then sort of retcon to look like that grain ship. So that was very cool to hear that name. No, this Antares is actually a modified Miranda-class ship, and we've seen a few of those in the history of Trek. And finally, the Cortez, named after the Spanish conquistador Hernan Cortez. It has to fall back toward the end of this episode, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens there. I'm sure everyone aboard will be just fine. And let's talk about guest star as well. if it isn't old home week again. It's like we're on a first-name basis. There's Max, Mark, Jeffrey, Aaron, Andy, JG, Casey, Chase, and for his run on the show, we have Barry, again, it would be Barry Jenner, back as Admiral Ross, and another performance by Salome Jens as the female changeling.
Things don't come to a head in this episode, but at the very least they come to a midsection, maybe the upper torso.
Prologue. Open on a damaged Defiant under command of Captain Dax, under attack by Jem'Hadar ships. But there's a surprise. Martok and the IKS Rotaran are hiding in a cloak where the Defiant has been fine all along. This is just their little game to draw out the bad guys and take aim when they least expect it. A couple of Jem'Hadar ships destroyed, but now the Defiant and the Rotaran are called back to Starbase 375. Morale is low. Dax tells Sisko that these little skirmishes aren't good enough, that they feel that they need a real victory, a big victory. Sisko says he agrees, and he has just the plan to retake Deep Space Nine. Act 1. In the mess hall of Starbase 375, Garak is complaining to his friends that he thinks Starfleet implanted a chip in his head, which the others remind him did not happen, but he is being debriefed heavily about everything that's going on. He was a Cardassian spy, after all. He probably has some strategically useful information to help turn the tide with the Dominion. Sisko is spelling out his plan to Starfleet top brass, and it goes something like this. Let's take a whole lot of ships and go get Deep Space Nine. They're interested. It means the Dominion will send a bunch of ships to defend it, which means they won't be causing havoc in other parts of the Alpha Quadrant. Okay, it's worth considering as long as they don't just decide to attack Earth instead. Sisko thinks that's unlikely. DS9 is strategically too important, right there next to the wormhole. At the moment on DS9, Tarek Noor, Quark interrupts his usual schmoozing so he can catch up with Kira. They're both ready to confront Odo about his total failure to protect Rom and carry out the Resistance plan. No go, though. Security won't even tell Odo that he has visitors, so this will have to wait for another time. What is happening inside Odo's quarters is certainly different. He and the female changeling have apparently been experimenting with what intimacy is like for a couple of solids. Just a little experiment, one that took 3 days. Odo is worried when he realizes he's been detached from his friends for that long, but his companion reminds him that he's timeless and needn't concern himself with the needs of the solids. Then she links with him again to make Odo care even less about his obligations. Act 2. So about Rom. He's been held for a week, and Kira asks Weyoun if he can finally be released. Weyoun says that won't be possible since poor Rom is to be executed. He did ruin their plans to wipe out the minefield, and he came up with these self-replicating mines in the first place. He needs to be made into a warning for other terrorists. And a good thing he doesn't believe Lita also conspired, or she would be executed too. That brings us to the holding cell where Rom is understandably morose. There's not much way out of this, and neither Lita nor Quark can do much to cheer him up. Rom does quietly confide in Quark that he needs him to do just one thing: destroy the anti-graviton beam. It's the only way to protect the minefield and save billions of lives in the Alpha Quadrant. Quark doesn't think he's the right man for the job, but he goes away, leaving Rom with Lita. Kira catches up with Tora Ziyal to try another angle. Maybe she could talk Dukat into freeing Rom, but as one might expect, he is not open to the idea. even with appeals to his mercy that would make him a great man. To Dukat, Rom is an enemy of the state, and he will be shown no mercy, infuriating Ziyal, who storms away from his office. With options to save Rom coming up short, Kira and Quark talk over what's next, but they're interrupted by a very cocky Damar. When he sends Kira off on some busy work, he confides in Quark why he's feeling so good. The minefield is coming down in a week. Act 3. As Sisko's plans to retake DS9 start to take shape, Starfleet is on board, but the Klingons aren't, and it's going to take all their combined might to be successful. Martok and Worf will head off to see Gowron to convince him that they need to join the attack. Back on Terok Nor, news about the minefield has Kira and Quark trying to figure out what to do if they can't spring Rom or get to Odo. Then along comes Jake with some interesting news. He's enlisted Morn to take a secret message to Captain Sisko, hidden in a present for Morn's mother. That's how they'll let Starfleet know about the minefield. And it works. Admiral Ross and Sisko get the message, but the bad news is there's no time to muster the Ninth Fleet or wait for the Klingons. They'll have to go now if there's any hope of destroying the anti-graviton emitter. Act 4. Dukat confidently points out his success to Weyoun. In 3 days, they'll be able to wholesale take down the minefield that's blocking the wormhole, thus allowing the huge fleet of Dominion craft on the other side to come racing through. Damar enters the room to bring some news about Starfleet. There are ships that have left the front line and assembled at Starbase 375. Why? He's not sure, but he promises to find out. Dukat has a new job for Damar, though. It's about Ziyal. She left her father on such bad terms a few days ago, and now Dukat needs an intermediary like Damar to convince her to come back and speak to him. He wants his daughter there with him when the minefield comes down and they have their moment of victory. Ziyal is disillusioned about her father, and she confides in Kira when they're talking in a cargo bay. Ziyal knows Dukat is a liar, but Kira is the one who says he actually does care for her in his own weird way. Damar interrupts the scene with the demand that she come join Dukat, but Ziyal refuses. The pushier he gets, Kira loses it and knocks Damar out cold so she and Ziyal can get out of there. Back at good old 375, Ross says his farewell to Sisko and wishes him good luck on the mission ahead. Sisko has been studying Bajoran texts, looking for what exactly? Inspiration? Insights? A message from the prophets? He's still uneasy about it all, but he tells Admiral Ross that when his assignment at DS9 is over, he fully intends to build a house and call Bajor his home. Nog reports for duty, announcing to Chief O'Brien that he's been made an ensign. No time to celebrate the promotion, though. With Sisko taking his place in the command chair, it's time for the Defiant to lead a packed fleet on its way to take back Deep Space Nine. Act 5, Dukat breaks the news to Weyoun. Starfleet's forces are on their way to Terok Nor, which means someone tipped them off about the minefield, which means they need to recall a bunch of their own ships now to play defense. The other person playing defense is Damar, who comes in to break the bad news that he couldn't get through to Ziyal, and Kira beat him up. So he'd like to arrest her. All Weyoun cares about is that Dukat focus on the coming fleet, so deal with the family issues later, thank you very much. As the female changeling discusses with Odo that the concerns of the insignificant solids are no longer his to consider, Weyoun interrupts with news of the war. Odo is dismissed, but it seems like the pressure from the other changeling may have finally changed his attitude. He chases down Kira with something of an apology, one that she's not ready to accept, when she spells out exactly what is coming while he has been occupied with his visitor. Cut to that great big fleet of ships heading toward DS9, hundreds of ships. It's an impressive sight. Just not quite as impressive as double the number of Dominion ships which are en route to intercept them. To be continued.
Wonderful job, John, with the synopsis. I know that because it's so heavily plot-driven that it's not an easy synopsis to break down. And far be it from me to micromanage how you would do
Sure.
that. Very much like the way that maybe, I don't know, Dax kind of micromanaged her navigator at the beginning of the episode to get back to Starbase 357 because he's never been there before.
You think? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that's a good point. He would know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Put these coordinates in, like I've never done that in the history of ever in this mission.
Exactly. I do like that. There was that was kind of a weird, clunky moment, but there were other weird, clunky moments, especially in the teaser, that just felt odd. Like, here's the thing: when you're a writer and you're trying to figure out a scene, you're starting with, okay, what is the objective? What's the motivation? How do we get our characters, even through this, scant few pages of dialogue, how do we get them to where they need to go? But there was something in that dialogue that was just like, it boiled down to, Captain, we need a victory. Okay, here's my plan for a victory. Like, the exposition was just, it was strange.
Yeah.
It was strange. Yeah.
And it's because we're moving so fast. We're moving so much content forward because it has to, it has to build to, obviously, this cliffhanger ending, the to be continued. But you're right. There is still a little bit of a jarring type of feeling where Dax, she might as well just kind of like flip the table, emoji flip the table and get into Sisko's face about something.
Right.
And he's just like, hey, man, I get
Right.
it. It's all cool. I have a plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
But speaking of the plan, okay, so let's kind of take a look at this from a macro perspective.
Yeah.
The Dominion is winning the war. The minefield is about to be taken down. Well, we don't know this yet, to be fair. But we know that the Dominion incursion is imminent. They are losing almost every battle that they're in. They strike forward, they retreat back, and Sisko has a plan he believes is going to change the tide of the war. But not until the 0800 hours.
I know.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
even doing the math, even if Dax kind of read him the riot act, getting off the Defiant, and let's use Earth time,
Yeah.
it was 11:57
Yeah.
p.m. That means that for another 8 hours,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. It seems like time would have been of the essence. Like, that's the sort of thing that she comes back from the Defiant, and Sisko should be saying, like, here's the new assignment, the fleet is on the way. Like, like, we've been working on this since you've been gone. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Right. It's like, so no time. It would have been, no time to rest, old man. We have a meeting with the brass. Why? Because we're invading Deep Space Nine right now.
Yeah. Like, get ready. Get ready. And the only thing we have to wait on at all is just some more ships to get here, and that's it. But then as soon as they're here, we're off. Time is of the essence. Yeah. Yeah. I did want to bring up something. I don't mean it to be nitpicky at all, but I did want to address it in the show. Someone called me out online for maybe being inappropriately critical of the CG work on DS9, even though I felt like last week and a couple of weeks ago, I think that I went to great pains to explain that I specifically wasn't just pointing out that it was old CGI, that it's kind of primitive by today's standards. That was, it's a given for the time frame. This is a new technology. What I was trying to say was that it is a transition point for Star Trek where we had traditionally seen model work all along, model work that I love, and there are pros and cons to that change. The benefit here is that you can have a lot more ships on screen moving in ways that we haven't been able to do before with CG. The downside to me, and that's purely subjective, they look very different from traditional model work, especially during this time. So to me, there's a piece of that visual language of Star Trek that changed, and you can sort of pinpoint it and say it changed right here. So I'm very glad that CG got better. But by no means was I trying to compare CG that was done in 1997 with what's capable today. But you see it in this episode, and definitely we'll see it more in the next episode, where you just can fill the screen with a lot of ships that otherwise would have been a lot of passes with a camera, and then that degrades when you optically print that. So there's a lot of freedom, but the downside is it's just going to look different.
Yeah, and I thought you were clear about that when you mentioned it before, but I know that they're pushing the boundaries of their technology, but at the same time, try being a Babylon 5 fan at this time with their graphics.
Right.
All right, let's put that into context.
Yeah, no,
right?
I mean,
Deep Space Nine was amazing looking, and me with Babylon 5.
Absolutely. No, it's really good, and especially on a TV budget. They're putting every penny on screen here. But again, this is, like I said, it's a transitional moment for TV. It's a transitional moment for Star Trek specifically. So that's going to be jarring, no matter what.
And, it's the same thing with, I think we've brought this up before, with kind of like the static acrylic overlays that have the graphics of like Deep Space Nine and like Sisko's war plans. And, it's hanging there and it's static. And, if ever Deep Space Nine gets a facelift, those would be really nice to enhance, to show like all these different tactical maps and wireframe models and things of that nature. But sometimes it does date itself when you see something like that. And no fault of its own. It is what it is.
Exactly. And like, I forget the name off the top of my head. Please, no letters. But there was an episode of TOS when they did the remastering that, a lot of people got very worked up about, well, I don't like that shot of that ship, or it's too in my face. It doesn't look like 1966. Fine, that's all well and good. But every now and then they do something really subtle. Like you'd have Kirk walking in front of either the main viewer or display screen, but they added a little bit of animation to that, and you could do it really cleanly as a cutout with CG in a way that you can't do even with good green screen. So stuff like that I love. I love seeing that sort of effect added in. Oh, by the way, look, I may have just been zoned out, not paying attention to it. When did we get another new way to say Bajor? Did I miss it somewhere along the lines? Because there was Bajor, there was Bajor, and now there's Bajor. I hear, like, especially Wayun and Dukat. I hear them, and it sounds like when those two actors, we got Mark Alimo and Jeffrey Combs in the same room, they're feeding off of each other's interesting energy, interesting characterization, and it just stuck out to me in this episode. Like, well, now we have a new way to say Bajor.
Maybe Mark and Jeffrey were like, I wonder if the fans will notice this.
Right.
And maybe 25 years from now, someone will nitpick about this somewhere. But hey, why not? Let's have a little fun.
Can we make it smarmier? Let's go with that.
Well, maybe that's what it is. It was kind of like a very kind of like, you're right, smarmy way of saying. It's very blithe the way they say it. It's like Bajor,
right?
So I don't know. It fit them.
Totally does,
because it wasn't punctuated like as Sisko would say, like Bajor or Bajor.
And it's funny because in every Star Trek script, even if it's not new, but most frequently when it's new, there will be a pronunciation guide at the beginning of a script. Like you have the characters, you have maybe a breakdown of locations if that's needed, and then there's a pronunciation guide because when there are invented words, you got to clue people in as to what's happening. So
like sabotage.
Like sabotage. Yeah,
like sabotage. Here's another thing that I found interesting. Just one of those kind of like production nitpicks. The Vulcan ambassador in Sisko's briefing scene. First of all, I didn't know that Vulcans got that jaundiced.
Yeah,
I don't know when that happened. I know the Romulans did, but I guess since they're of the same species, so to speak, they get the same makeup treatment right up until their neckline.
Yeah, that was. This is not the kind of show where we just sort of like bash something for the sake of bashing something. That scene did not sit well with me, and I think it didn't sit well with me because of the Vulcan Admiral. There was something about that scene that did not play true to me. Might have been the makeup, might have been the performance they were getting out of that actor, or something with the direction. It didn't work, and I think that was one of the weaker scenes in the episode.
Yeah. Well, I know sometimes they don't want to go too far down with makeup because it gets on the collar and they have to reset certain things. But it just looked a little strange because it was so stark. And again, if this ever gets remastered, it becomes more so.
Oh, it's going to stand out. Yeah.
The makeup that I thought was really impressive was every time I see Morn more and more and more, he really does start looking like George Wendt to me. I don't know if it's subliminal.
I get it.
But it just does.
I get it. I totally
George Wendt being Norm from Cheers.
Yes, I totally get it. I do want to point out a great bit of business, a little choice by an actor here. I could have watched 10 more minutes of Wei-Yun looking at Torres-Yal's painting. Just the body language, the weird, and we've talked about Jeffrey's physical acting before, and he does it again toward the end of this episode where he interrupts Odo and the female changeling and just again won't look them in the eye, and he's sort of, he becomes smaller in that moment. But in this scene where he's looking at the painting and his head is down on the table beside it, it's so good. It's such a wonderful physicality around that moment. I could have kept watching and then just asking, is it any good? He doesn't get it. He's wonderful.
But that also informs more of his character as he expounds upon later.
Totally.
We're just not aesthetically programmed that way.
Right.
And he almost regrets that. He's like, I wish I could take pleasure in whatever you other beings are taking pleasure in, whether it's art or music or food.
Yes. Yeah. Well,
he would probably say the same thing about the best caviar that he's ever been served. He's like, I don't have the aesthetic for this. Weak taste buds.
Right. Yeah. Well, and exactly it. Like, I love the details we get about the Vorta, that they're not creative, they have no appreciation of art, weak eyesight, good ears, but weak eyesight. It was just every little detail they feed you about the Vorta. Not only does it perfectly fit Jeffrey Combs, it perfectly fits what we see of the Vorta overall. It's like the perfect combination of writers, actors, and then concept to flesh out this universe. So I love it. The funny thing to me in this episode is how nobody is bothering to put together any of the pieces about the Resistance.
I know. It kills me.
Okay, so it's been a week. And keep in mind, we've got another week coming, and that partly plays in, I think, to our choice to treat these as two separate episodes rather than one episode, because it allows us to focus on, what do we actually accomplish here? As opposed to what do we accomplish over time? What we accomplish here is that Rom's in jail. Who's coming to visit him? Why are Kira and Quark spending so much time together? What's all the traffic to each other's quarters? And finally, with Torres-Yal asking her father to free Rom, for which she would have no concern. Otherwise, it seems like just a very short step to connect Kira to all of this. I mean,
yes,
it is
so many red flags.
And it's been a week. It's been a week, Norman, because they say this isn't one of those episodes where they say, like, oh, it was yesterday. No. They point out that Rom's been in jail for a week. Sorry, but I no longer buy the idea of the Cardassians seeing and knowing everything. I think Garrick, he is just the standalone, incredible spy. That's why he was part of the Obsidian Order, because otherwise the Cardassians like, yep, nothing to see here. Yeah,
Garrick and Maritza. The two greatest record keepers in the history of the Cardassian Empire.
That's it. Yeah. Just.
I thought the same thing. I said, first of all, when somebody gets captured in your resistance cell, the rest of the cell goes to ground.
Yeah. Right.
They disappear.
Right.
They don't talk to each other. They don't see each other anymore. As a matter of fact, they might even dissolve the entire cell entirely, create different cells, because they believe that they're being watched. They believe one of their cellmates. Resistance cellmates is now in a holding cell. You would think that they would be observing every movement, every person going in there and bugging everywhere, to hear anything.
Yes,
because the reason why he was cut, because he was trying to destroy the one thing that is keeping the Dominion at bay. It's kind of important.
You would think. Yeah. Such a good moment with Kira. Again, not sticking out like a sore thumb here to anybody, but when she says, "You don't like my attitude, Damar? You're welcome to try to change it." What a great setup, and that look on Damar's face as he tries to kind of resummon his composure. Subtle, but great. Just awesome.
And this is the flip side of the Cardassians. Okay, so you have the intelligence gathering system. You have the Obsidian Order, of which Darheel and Gul Darheel, Maritza, and Garrick are obviously the epitome of.
Right.
But then I always thought that the Cardassians were fairly kind of like tight-lipped about their plans and stuff like that. And all it really takes is a bartender that you don't really know and a bottle of Kanar just to spill everything. Does that make sense to you?
You know what? Sometimes a Cardassian will tell his bartender things that he won't tell his commander or doctor.
So is it like
or
Dr. Quark Boyce?
Right. Well, but it is an interesting choice. It's like we've seen Cardassians of various jobs and various ranks and various motivations. And, kind of how we got trained out of seeing all Klingons as this honorable warrior race. Like, no, they also have scientists. They also have their own clergy. They also have, artists. They have other jobs within there. I think we also have to have some Cardassians who aren't all psychopathic, power-grubbing orders like Dukat. So you have to have somebody who is a little lower on the food chain, and maybe he's a little lower on the food chain because he makes bad choices. He might be good at covering those up, but he also makes bad choices, and he needs some supervision.
Maybe this is that pride goeth before a fall type thing.
Yeah, right.
Where he's like, who can take us down? We're the Cardassian Empire. It doesn't really matter what we say or do because we're going to win anyway.
Yeah.
So, there's a little bit of kind of like that James Bond villain monologuing that's going on here.
And Dukat has done that all along. Well, we've already won. We have the station. Like nobody can touch us. That he'd already decided that they had won when they set foot on the station again.
Yeah, we don't need those ships. I will defeat them.
Yeah, right.
Me.
Right.
And maybe that's rubbing off on Damar. He's like, hey, that's my boss.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that shine's going to, get sent my way. Now I can do whatever.
And if he's going to open up to anybody, Quark is probably the one. Like, the Kanar is probably the only pleasure out of the day that Damar gets. So,
probably.
But, oh, man, that scene of Kira beating up Damar, it's just so perfect, and it's such a payoff for us in the audience. Because Damar is so just foul, and we want to see him get what's coming to him. So
oh, he was pushing her buttons every episode.
Oh yeah
every episode.
He's Dukat's little toady and just as odious. Big turning point for Sisko telling Ross that he has plans to move to Bajor. I mean,
don't you mean Bajor?
Or Bajor. He's really bought in now, and it's interesting because whether or not he thinks he is the emissary and that has some higher kind of spiritual meaning to it, or it's like a functional role, whatever, for a guy who hasn't spent too much time on the surface so far, he really is committed to it. That's just that little moment with somebody not connected to Bajor says a lot.
I wish we saw more of that to make a little bit more, give this scene not so big of an ask. Because, yes, he did the whole thing where he went through that spirit quest, trying to find that cave in the ancient ruins. So he's connected with it in that way. But at the same time, though, he just professes his, undying need to go to Bajor, if you will, and create a home there, a life there.
Yeah.
No matter where he gets sent. And it seems just a little accelerated for me, as do many decisions or many narrative choices that the writers have given the motivations for some characters. And I'll get into that in discussions.
Fair enough, yeah.
But the one thing, though, that's still, much to Renee's point, as you said in trivia, I just don't get where this narrative is going for him. And I'm sure we're going to have some discussion points about that. But This is one of those small things that I noticed. When he was walking away from the camera, did you see his arm bump into the railing, like into one of those pylons that kind of stood out? His arm just kind of like whacked it, and he just kept
I missed
walking
that.
away.
No, I missed that. Oh.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to go back and see it.
He played it off so nicely. It was like, nope, I got to get this take. I'm just going to keep walking.
Things that I have an easier time believing could take 3 days to do. A really good game of Scrabble.
We will be right back to Favor the Bold in a moment, but first a very quick word from Helix Sleep.
Helix Sleep has a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you.
Now, you've heard us talk about it before, how everybody's unique, and Helix knows that. So they have a lot of different mattresses to choose from. They have soft, medium, firm mattresses, great for cooling you down if you sleep hot, even a Helix Plus mattress for plus-size folks.
Just go to helixsleep.com/missionlog, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they'll match you to a customized mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it out for 100 nights, risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but you will.
And it gets even better. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners at helixsleep.com/missionlog. Again, that's helixsleep.com/missionlog, and we do thank Helix Sleep for sponsoring this week's show. So, Norman, I feel like something we're going to come back to here and in our final summary of the episode. There's always a give and take. There's always a pro and con, whether we treat an episode as a single part or, break it up the way it was aired. And in this case, we are 2 episodes into the end of what is a much longer arc. And so far, I think each of those episodes in the arc, particularly episodes like Sons and Daughters, Rocks and Shoals, have stood up on their own to do an examination. An episode like this one, and then its follow-up coming next week, there aren't so many specific areas to dive into or specific scenes where you say, like, ooh, that's the moral quandary, that's the ethical issue, or the philosophical moment that we're really supposed to key in on. This is something very unique. It's unique for Star Trek in that we're in a very long arc. It's unique that we're in a sub-arc of that longer arc. And there's a lot of plot-driven stuff here that we need to deal with. So I think what I did in my notes here, and you may have found a similar thing, is we're looking at character motivations. We're looking at these transitional moments from one to another. It's not so much about, as we say in mission log parlance, the save the whales or you see Timmy learning lesson from the episode. So carrying over one of the themes that we've looked at before that we get to look at more here is the emotional manipulation with Odo. And I do think it's absolutely fascinating. It speaks to the strength of emotionally manipulating anyone, but especially somebody who has up until now just sort of claimed to not have any taste for these, the motivations that solids have, love and jealousy or, strong friendships or whatever. It's this sort of vague idea about the link, and that's it. But he understands that there is a stronger friendship, at least, that he has with the people on Deep Space Nine. In this episode, we push that even further, where this manipulation becomes sexual. And as a human watching the show, I think we can understand this deeply intimate personal connection that Odo is being shown by the female changeling. And even with her drawing up some jealousy, or maybe him drawing up a little bit of jealousy about Kira. So there were some odd and very interesting choices going on with the idea to, I can imagine the writer's mind saying, how do we take Odo kind of off his game a bit? How do we make him not be that stalwart of justice and that, hyper loyal, very reliable person that we've had up until now? How can we manipulate him? How can we make the audience believe that he wouldn't do the honorable or the just thing? And what we do is we send in this female changeling and really throw everything for a loop.
That scene was very perplexing to me because it's difficult to try and understand where Odo is coming from when the link, as you said, is so enticing. It's something that it's dangled in front of him, this, whatever the perception is of this link to Odo, because the female changeling says that it's almost undescribable. Like, Odo can't describe it to Kira. She can't even really describe it to Odo, but she does, because she does link with him on occasion when she feels Odo is going astray or his loyalties are being tested. It's like a drug. You want to break free from it, but all of a sudden you just get another taste of it and you remember how wonderful it makes you feel. And the issue with the intimacy and the hinting towards, having, being sexually active with each other. How is that any better than the link itself? What is she trying to prove with that, unless something that I thought about when they were in chambers together, when they weren't being bothered? What if she actually took Kira's form?
Whoa.
So she can do that.
Yeah.
Because Odo understands intimacy. He understands what that felt like, with his love interest in A Simple Investigation. He fell in love. They had that scene. We talked about that on the show, and it made a lot of sense. The ask was honest there in that scene. But in this scene, because the link is it's so enticing, it's so inviting, and something that's just out of his reach, she gives him that opportunity to feel the presence of that, the greatness, the intangibility of it, but then explores human intercourse with her. Why? Unless she's maybe took on Kira's form to manipulate Odo. It's like, this is what it would feel like to be with Kira. Now that you felt that, this link is better. You've already gotten past that stage.
Yeah.
But we know that they didn't imply that, so I'm just, making that conjecture, but a really interesting way to twist his head.
Yeah. How much further could they take that? And I wonder at the end of the day, are we really satisfied with Odo's change of heart or change of loyalty here? It was very interesting to see him that manipulated and that compromised by another changeling. That draw must be just profoundly strong. And what we're waiting for is the moment. And we got, the hint of that at the end of this episode. He's trying to make amends. He's realized something. So now he's got to reach out to Kira and fix this horrible situation that he's gotten them into, that he could have prevented days and days, a week ago. So I do kind of wonder, I guess if we're accepting that he was that manipulable, are we also accepting that his change of heart back to his friends? I don't know. Are you buying that? I don't know if we had a really strong enough moment to say, yes, this is why Odo changes his mind.
Well, looking from this at a really bird's eye top down view, the one thing that I didn't really consider, and it kind of just popped into my mind from our conversation last episode about, say, Data. Okay, so I haven't watched forward, so I didn't cheat the timeline, but it's possible that Odo is the one that's manipulating her. He may be betraying all of his beliefs in order to go so deep undercover that he has to basically shun or betray everybody to make that so believable, to make them doubt his loyalties to his former allies and friends, especially Kira, so that he can sell that moment that Data had when he turns to the Borg Queen and says resistance is futile and pulls the gas hose and decimates all the Borg. But Data sold it. He sold the seduction. He sold that he betrayed everybody. maybe Odo's doing the same thing because he is going so far off the reservation when it comes to who he was that he knew that the female changeling was coming to Deep Space Nine, and he's planted this way in advance.
See, I was going to go totally opposite direction, and when you said Data, my mind went to, here's the character who's your friend, who you trust, who then goes nuts, takes over the Enterprise, steals it, locks everybody out. He can destroy you at will, and then the next week you're like, it's just our friend Data again. Too bad about that one moment, but here's all your privileges on the bridge again.
Well, it still can go that way. It can still go that way. But it just seems to me that his motivations very well may be going like deep, deep, deep double agent cover.
Okay. I wish I had your optimism about him playing that multidimensional chess. I think he's seriously being played here. And, obviously something has changed where he's got to go find Kira. He's got to try to fix this. But man, did he get it. 3 days? Come on, 3 days straight. I do want to bring up that dialogue that he had with the other changeling toward the end of the episode, that last long scene that they had together. Some fascinating dialogue between them. When she's saying it's the solids, they look small, don't they? Insignificant. He says it's not their fault. I'm not placing blame. They're trapped, confined to a single shape, a single perspective. It's so limiting. I feel sorry for them. And go on and on and on a bit. And then he says they cherish their freedom. She says we'll have to break them of that. Now, that could very well be, in this long back and forth, certainly a moment where hopefully he's coming to his senses. But it's so telling about the changelings who think that they are evolved, who think that they are so much more kind of removed and special from the petty needs and petty motivations of the solids. But at the same time, their vision is so narrow because they truly do look at everybody else as their playthings. Like their evolved sensibility hasn't gotten them any better at being empathetic toward any other creature at all. And this is something that you brought up last week, I believe, Norman, the idea that they do send out changelings into the universe to hopefully learn and gain knowledge and come back and reabsorb that into the link. They're not actually learning from it. It's like they're getting reconnaissance. They're getting data from it, data with a little d, not a big D, but they're not actually taking that in any sort of empathetic or understanding way. It's unfortunate to see, of course, this is the hubris that is sort of baked into them now. They think they're so advanced, they're so special, but they can't help but see everybody else as just merely there as a plaything.
Well, the one thing that I haven't really bought into with the Founders and the Dominion, if one changeling can disrupt what they were able to disrupt at the highest levels of power in, say, the Klingon High Command, with Martok being the traitor and casting aspersions on Gowron, that was one. And maybe there was like another one that was, making the Deep Space Nine, that they were upended because they were trying to find this person. So let's say that there were maybe, I don't know, half a dozen just creating random chaos and keeping everybody at bay and making everybody terrorized. And
sure,
if they feel that in any way they might lose this war, why didn't they just send the entire link after the Alpha Quadrant?
Yeah.
They would have taken over everything,
yeah.
And then that's it. Story's done. But we wouldn't have a show, obviously.
Right.
But the thing is this, when you give a race that much power, the nth degree conclusions that we're drawing from that don't make these motivations make a lot of sense. Because they can do literally whatever they want, whenever they want, even before the wormhole was mined. They were there in the Alpha Quadrant. They probably still have beings in the Alpha Quadrant. That's why they probably want Odo back. But their power is almost limitless, in a sense.
Yeah.
Especially being able to do and take on any form at will.
Yeah.
They can take on an animal, they can take on a person that has political power, they can take on anything that they need for their advantage. So why just let these random Vorta that obviously aren't getting the job done, and the Jem'Hadar who obviously aren't getting the job done, why leave it to them at all?
Right.
They have all the power in the universe to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And if they want to create this structure with the Vorta and the Jem'Hadar, then why interfere at all?
Sure. They do live with a certain amount of fear, and it's interesting that in the overall Star Trek picture, Star Trek tries to say that humanity can evolve to a more compassionate, more empathetic, advanced state. And we use the tools of science, we use the tool of understanding and compassion to be better. But Star Trek also has this sort of love-hate relationship with technology and power that has gone too far. If you have too much power, you have too much technology at the wrong point in your evolution, then, well, forget it. You will go down a much darker path. Here we have this species that has grown and grown and grown, outgrown their solid state, because they are that good. They didn't need it anymore. But they have left behind any sense of compassion or fairness or even the ability to leave alone others in the universe, and clearly in a different quadrant of the universe. So, yeah, they're very unique.
Yeah. There's also kind of like a parallel, like the boredom of the gods of Olympus. They took different forms in order to, infest, to ingrain themselves with, humanity, in mortals. And maybe they're just so bored that they want to... Infestate's a word, right? Did I make that up?
I like it. You go with it. Yeah.
Olympian Infestation. That's our band name.
Ooh, man, that's good.
Yeah. But I was hoping that we could pivot from this a little bit, because I know that there's probably going to be a little bit more of this to come. But the things that I wanted to try and see how you felt about it were some of the bigger asks in this episode when it came to character turns. And were they a little too quick? Were they a little too unearned? Especially Sisko being so heavy-handed about how much he loves Bajor and how he wants to retire there, build a home there, no matter where he serves in Starfleet. That just seemed like, okay, you're making a very specific point of something that you've never, ever, ever really built up to make a specific point about.
Yeah.
Why do you think that was the case here?
Yeah, I did wonder why that came out. Like, if we had constantly seen Sisko going back to Bajor, and yes, he has been there. He spent time at that ancient temple, but I feel like we got more out of time on Bajor through Kira and even through O'Brien and Bashir, to be quite honest, fighting the cloud monster. Those were more standout moments to me. And Sisko has had this very uneasy acceptance of his role in the Bajoran culture and the Bajoran religious culture specifically. So I wonder if that was planted there just because it's like, okay, here we are in our 6th season. We're only going to go on for so much longer. We have to plant the seeds for what becomes of Sisko and where his loyalties are. But it seemed out of place. Not wrong, because, he has been on this space station outside of Bajor for 6 years, but it just seems out of place, or it seems a little too earnest, maybe for him at this point. Yeah.
And that same kind of earnestness kind of cascades into Ducat's character, because for the majority of when he successfully reappropriated Terok Nor, it was all about how he, the Cardassian Empire, the military, was able to do this, and it was Ducat standing on top, looking down on high. But now, all of a sudden, when the moment is right, when he's going to basically checkmate the Federation and their allies, He wants his daughter to be there without question. Without question, sending Damar to get his Cardassian butt handed to him by Kira. But it just seems like all of a sudden he threw kind of like logic and caution to the wind. It's like, whatever it takes, I want her by my side.
Yeah.
Just
well, see, that moment I had a much easier time accepting and believing, because to me, where we are with Dukat now is that he is a sociopath whose only concern is the power that he has, and that power can come in the form of Deep Space Nine, or Tarek Nora being the commander of that station, or getting his title back as Gull, or, being on the quote-unquote winning side with Dominion, a show of power. So Zial just becomes another trophy. It becomes another thing
That's
to
fair
win.
Fair point, yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a thing to win, to say, like, oh, okay, I can have all these victories, but it doesn't mean anything until I have other people acknowledge that I have that thing. And what better way to do that than to have, the daughter that he was so ready to kill at one point, to be there and sort of feed that bit of his ego. It's so funny to me now that I think back about those episodes where I was ready to give Dukat, maybe cut him a little bit of slack. Like, maybe he's developing a conscience. Maybe he's actually developing friendships with other people around. And I do think, like, to my own credit, the writers of Deep Space Nine were playing with that. And then at a certain point, they decided, like, nah, we need to make him the bad guy. And they really made him the bad guy again, So that manipulation with Tora Zial is, I think it's right up there with his just unending need for power and to express that power.
More things that I have an easier time believing could take 3 days to do. Hemming all of O'Brien's pants.
All right, Norman, we have boldly discussed the ins and outs of Favor the Bold. We've picked it apart. We've examined some of the ideas, motivations, and characters within. But now we got to boldly wrap it all up, see what it all means in the end. So I ask you about this episode. Again, kind of a weird, it is half of a two-parter. It is also the tail end of a much bigger parter. So Favor the Bold, Norman, does the episode hold up?
Well, I mean, forgive me, audience, for being bold in saying this, but I would say yes and no. It's a little uneven for me. Actually, it's a lot uneven for me because, and maybe it's because we are in a two-parter with inside a major arc. So there's a lot of transition going on. But I also feel that in transitional episodes, in storytelling, there still has to be moments that feel earned and motivations that feel like they are paying off either a previous motivation or building to something a little bit more, but you're building it from something that's already there, that's been established. So I think that the narrative arc is strong. I think that in the serialized format that we're in now, we know that it's not going to like end on solid ground, but there were just certain things for me, like I mentioned before, like Sisko all of a sudden, professing his love for settling on Bajor. Dukat just all of a sudden wants his daughter there. Mm-hmm. But there were also things that I thought were a little strange as well, like Sisko holding off for X amount of hours to not plan his attack. I mean, when they were caught with their pants down and run out of time, I bet they wish they had some of that time back, because a war is urgent and you want to get your strategies in as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they sent Worf and Martok off to get Elrond's help, and that's great, but it just feels like some of these moments were kind of tropish of the overall Star Trek flavor of the 90s. You build up this great episode and something gets resolved in like the last 2 minutes or last minute and a half, or sleep, or something like that. Right? Everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But in the end, when you have these massive explosions and war scenes and all of these great special effects that are going on, I'm still trying to figure out, do I believe the motivations of certain characters moving forward in the series because they're earned, or it's because they need to push the story along? Now, they're not mutually exclusive ideals, believe me, but I need to, maybe it'll all make sense to me once this is all over. But like Renee, I just don't really feel settled with where I'm at right now, trying to understand the storyline. Again, that's just me, and because they're probably building this incredible narrative with so many threads that I'm going to be like, wow, I'm going to listen to this, and I'm going to be like, you're such an idiot, Norm. You didn't see any of that coming. And it's possible. That very well might be true, but that's where I'm at right now. What about you?
Yeah, it's a good episode, but it's a strange episode because we have a story that is designed functionally to get us a step closer to wrapping up this much bigger chapter of the Dominion War. I think there are plot elements that are very good, or at least very interesting. But it's all about that build-up. It's all about getting us into the next one. They are doing a great job with Zial and making that rift with Dukat and Kira very realistic and have higher stakes for both of them. So it's not just Kira and Dukat hate each other because they're on opposite sides of this occupation and then there's a history there. It's like, no, there's also somebody that they care about who's in the middle. As weird as Dukat's motivations may be for caring, he still has an emotional investment in it. And Kira definitely has an emotional investment in it. So I love that build. I think the stuff with Odo and the female changeling is just odd. And I hope that we get more clarity in the coming episodes about what actually is driving Odo. Because as enticing as the Great Link has been for him, and as manipulative as the female changeling has been for him, I want to really buy it that he has been on this journey and he understands what he has to do. Not just like, well, he's Odo, so he has to do the right thing in the end. I like that's the moment that I'm waiting for. And this episode wasn't designed necessarily to deliver that, but we'll see where we get there. The other thing about this episode is that, again, we brought it up before, but the pacing is just strange. It is just odd. You're wrapping your head around Rom, having been in the brig for a week, but nothing's happened to anyone else. And then it's, well, a week has gone by, but we have tested out this weapon, the anti-graviton beam, but we're going to do it once or twice. Well, why aren't you just constantly doing that then? And why is it going to be another 3 days?
And why hasn't anyone interrogated Rom like the Obsidian Order would have?
Exactly. So there are just a lot of odd choices on how they decided to plot this out. Like, and I've said this before on other episodes of Mission Log and Mission Log Live, where, and maybe people didn't fully understand what I was saying when I said it, but it's one of those points where I like the idea of where we go, where we're actually headed here. I like the idea of, okay, we're doing something big, we're doing something epic, we're putting our characters through something challenging. But I don't necessarily love the mechanics of the story getting us there. Like, just the scene to scene, moment by moment, like, okay, I can sort of smell out where we're heading in the end here, but moment to moment, it's just strange. And maybe we would have had a better time with it doing this one and the next one together, but then again, there are reasons not to do that as well. And for me, I think one of the most compelling reasons is, how did this look to an audience in the 90s when they were watching it week to week? What did they get out of it? I want us to have that same experience too. What about now? We've said this isn't necessarily a morals meanings episode. Well, I said it anyway. Do you disagree with me? Did you find things in here that are morals meanings messages to discuss?
There's something that I couldn't really put my finger on, because I wanted to take a look at the motivations of three particular characters. In this case, the female changeling, who her machinations are going very deep into the overall plot line. Sisko, because he's had some pretty extreme character changes and motivations, and Dukat. And they're all tied together in one, I would say, obtuse way, in a way that people didn't see it. I saw it this way. I could have been exhausted when I was watching it, and it just came to me in a dream, a fever dream. But there's something that's almost divine about where they're drawing their authority from. Mm-hmm. And in the way that I tried to suss it out was there's this ideology of the divine right of kings, like the authority that's bestowed upon them by the divine so that they can act independently without anyone else's authority aside from God being on top of them. So let's take a look at, say, the female changeling. The founders, by and large, have been portrayed as gods in Deep Space Nine. Obviously, Wei Yun, he profuses himself. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
I'm so bad with, prostrates himself.
Okay,
Prostulates.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Prostrates himself, yes.
Prostrates himself. Grovels.
Yes.
In the face of these gods.
Yes.
To the point where he can't even make eye contact with them.
I love it.
Or, say, Odo and the female changeling looking down, and it's a great metaphor for how they feel about solids. They look down on them as if they are ants.
Yeah.
They're just scurrying about, and they're not concerned with the goings-on of these greater powers that are influencing their day-to-day lives. That's the divine right of being a god yourself and knowing that you have that power. Then let's go to Captain Sisko. Now, Captain Sisko's divine right, it comes from the prophets. He is the emissary of the Bajorans' divine. So he's acting and embracing that, but a little maybe too wholesale in this episode because during the course of his strategizing and deliberation with Ross, he's also reading ancient Bajoran texts. Well, why would he do that in the midst of trying to plan the most tactical turnaround and re-engagement to the Dominion of this entire war? Why would he go to quote-unquote biblical texts? It's because he needs to use that. He needs to embrace that power of something more powerful than me is going to guide me in this direction, i.e. the prophets. I'm the emissary of their power and their influence, and that is what's going to make me prevail, help me prevail in this.
But have we really been shown that he believes that at this point?
And that's exactly my point.
Yeah.
That's where does that come from? Where is that ask being established or earned to the audience?
Yeah.
Because that ties into his last line where, he says, fortune favors the bold. Well, no, you're a tactical strategist of a Starfleet wing. It has nothing to do with luck. It has everything to do with preparation.
Yeah.
So 2-1 favor in the Dominion's odds against you, and you say that, oh, luck be a lady tonight. Hope you don't blow on some other guy's dice.
Right.
That'll be really bad.
Right.
Right? So, no, because he believes that the prophets and me being their emissary, like Muhammad, or the angel Gabriel, I'm going to deliver this fleet from evil. I'm going to deliver them through the fire because there's no other way that I can do it aside from believing that.
Yeah.
And we'll see if it pays off. Obviously it will. I'm a huge cynic about stuff like this so that we know that the story must go on, so nothing's really going to happen to him, right?
Right.
But then you have the divine right of the conqueror, and that's Dukat.
Yeah.
And everything that he does by my hand.
He is a hubris embodied. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Kull the Conqueror, if you like Robert E. Howard, by this axe I rule. Mm-hmm. Everything that he's done because he believes he has the power of his own destiny, driving the divine destiny of a conqueror. But the only thing that really is a bigger ask there is now he's applying it to Zial all of a sudden. Like, I want her to do everything because I want you, Damar, who's in charge of my tactical strategy, to just skip all that and go be my lackey because I need Zial by my side instead of the tactical intelligence that you obviously believe is important. Not important to me. You know why? Because I'm a god. But are you, though?
Yeah.
Right. So that's where I'm at right now. I thought it was interesting because in some way I do believe that there are these ways of tapping into the divine that gives you the architecture of how do I find my place in this greater story and how do I exercise my authority over people because there's no other way to deliver them, either my children, like the founders would say,
right?
Kaiwin would say, the fleet or the Cardassians.
Yeah.
There's no other way.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way of looking at all the kind of intersecting motivations throughout these stories. I said before that to me this is clearly a very plot-driven wrap-up to a long arc, which again is fine. It's not a bonk on the head with a message story. That is perfectly fine. We're working toward payoff. There was a moment here that is so small that we didn't even mention it at all in any of our other discussion, but I love it, and I wanted to point it out here because I think there is some truth in it. Think back, if you will, to early in the episode. Martok and Worf are talking about Gowron, and they're talking about the fact that Gowron is not behind deploying the Klingon fleet and moving them to go retake DS9 with the rest of Starfleet. And here's Martok and Worf, Martok on Gowron's good side, Worf definitely not on Gowron's good side, deciding they will go together to try to convince him of this. And Martok says, what could be better? An ally and an enemy both telling him the same thing. It's such a small thing, but it's so great. And seriously, I want to attempt to use this from now on. I don't know how, I don't know where, but think of the possibilities. Could you, Norman, could you be convinced of the truth of a claim that you did not believe if someone you love and someone you hate are both on the same page?
It's perfectly performed, too, by JG. The wisdom that's coming out of Martok at that time makes perfect sense. You buy that, though. But see, that's believable because Martok is that wise.
He is. And to me, if we learn nothing else specific in this episode, we got that little tip for life from Martok, that if you need to manipulate somebody into going your way, just find that person's enemy and team up with them, and maybe you'll be able to convince them.
Mission Log is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Our website and your opportunity to comment and connect with us is missionlogpodcast.com. If you would like to support Mission Log directly, you can do so at patreon.com/missionlog. And for more Star Trek news and discussion, be sure to visit trekmovie.com.
On the next Mission Log, Sacrifice of Angels.
Some of the music for Mission Log provided by Warp 11, online at warp11.com. At this rate, Marduk's Book of Wise Sayings is going to outsell that chart-topping bestseller, The Power of Positive Thinking for Negative Results. End transmission.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.